I'd been coming to the Starlight Motel every Thursday night for 63 weeks straight, not because I lived far from home. My apartment was only 40 minutes away in the city, but Thursday nights had become something I needed, a ritual that kept me tethered to myself when everything else in my life felt like it was spinning out of control. The first time I pulled into that gravel parking lot, it was raining. March rain, the kind that feels personal, like the sky is disappointed in you specifically. I'd just walked out of a work dinner where my boss had loudly congratulated me on my engagement to Christina, a woman I'd broken up with 3 weeks earlier but hadn't told anyone about yet. I couldn't breathe in that restaurant, surrounded by congratulations for a life I was supposed to want but didn't. So I drove. No destination. Just drove until I saw the neon sign flickering through the rain. Half the letters burned out so it read, Starlight Motel. The night clerk was behind the counter when I walked in, soaked through. He looked up from a paperback book, his reading glasses sliding down his nose. He had this presence about him, calm and unhurried, like he'd seen every type of person walk through those doors and nothing surprised him anymore. Dark hair, slightly too long, falling into his eyes. Maybe 30, maybe 35. He wore a name tag that said, Caspian. Rough night, he asked, and his voice had this quality to it, warm and low, that made me want to tell him everything. You could say that, I managed, dripping onto his linoleum floor. He slid a registration form across the counter. Room 17 is quiet. Corner unit. You'll like it. I didn't ask how he knew what I'd like. I just took the key, an actual metal key on a plastic diamond-shaped tag, and found my way through the rain to room 17. That room became my sanctuary. It wasn't fancy. The bedspread was that generic floral pattern you see in every budget motel. The TV was ancient, and the air conditioner rattled like it had opinions. But it was mine. In a way, nothing else felt like mine. I'd lie on that bed and stare at the ceiling with its water stain that looked like a map of some country I'd never visit, and I could finally think, really think about who I was and what I wanted, without my mother's expectations or my colleagues' assumptions or society's blueprint pressing down on my chest. The second Thursday, I came back without really deciding to. My body just drove there after work, muscle memory taking over. Caspian was behind the counter again, same book, different page. Welcome back, he said, like he'd been expecting me. Room 17? How did you know I'd want the same room? He smiled, just a slight upturn at the corner of his mouth. Everyone who comes back wants the same room. It's human nature. We're all looking for something familiar to hold on to. He was right. Over the weeks, room 17 became more familiar than my own bedroom. I started bringing things. First, just an overnight bag with a change of clothes. Then a book I'd been meaning to read, a journal, better coffee than the packets the motel provided. Caspian never commented on the growing frequency of my visits. Never asked why a guy with a perfectly good apartment, 40 minutes away, needed to spend every Thursday night in a $70 motel room. But he started doing small things. The 5th week, there was a better pillow on the bed, the firm kind, not the flat pancake ones the other rooms had. The 7th week, he'd left a note on the desk in handwriting that was surprisingly elegant, just a phone number and the words, front desk, if you need anything. The 12th week, I found a small plant on the windowsill, a succulent in a chipped ceramic pot. You left a plant in my room, I said when I checked out Friday morning. Room 17's plant, he corrected, not looking up from his computer. Seemed like it needed something alive in there. I started timing my arrivals for his shifts. I learned he worked Thursdays through Mondays, overnight, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I learned he was reading his way through the entire Western canon in alphabetical order by author, and was currently stuck in the D's with Dostoevsky. I learned he drank his coffee black with 1 sugar, and that he'd moved to town 2 years ago from somewhere he never quite specified. I learned that when he laughed, really laughed, he'd cover his mouth with his hand like he was surprised by the sound of his own joy. And he learned things about me too, though I never meant to tell him. It started with small talk that became real talk. How I was a financial analyst who'd stumbled into the career because it seemed safe and practical. How I'd been engaged because it seemed like the next logical step. Like following a recipe I didn't remember choosing. How I was 28 years old and felt like I'd been living someone else's life, wearing it like an ill-fitting suit I couldn't figure out how to take off. "Why Thursdays?" he asked me one night around week 20. It was late April by then, and the window was cracked open, letting in the smell of honeysuckle from the bush, growing wild by the parking lot. I was sitting on the counter in the office, something that had become normal between us, my legs dangling, sharing the sandwich I'd brought from a deli in the city. Thursdays are far enough from the weekend that no one questions why I'm not making plans, but close enough that I can tell myself I'm almost free. Free from what? I took a breath. This was the conversation I'd been avoiding for 20 weeks. From pretending to be someone I'm not. Caspian was quiet for a moment, and in that silence I could hear the hum of the vending machine, the distant sound of the highway, my own heartbeat too loud in my ears. "And who are you?" he asked finally. "When you're not pretending?" I looked at him then. Really looked at him. The way the fluorescent light caught in his dark hair, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way he was looking at me like my answer mattered, like I mattered. "I don't know yet," I whispered, "but I think I'm starting to figure it out." He nodded slowly. "Room 17's a good place for that." By week 30, I realized I wasn't coming to the starlight for the room anymore. I was coming for those conversations in the quiet hours between midnight and dawn. Caspian would prop the office door open so he could hear if anyone drove up, and we'd talk about everything and nothing, philosophy and terrible movies and what we'd be doing if we could do anything in the world without consequences. "I'd have a bookstore," he told me once, "one of those old ones with creaky floors and a cat, and absolutely no organization system. Books just everywhere, and you'd have to hunt for what you wanted, and that would be part of the magic." "That sounds perfect," I said. "What about you, Hollis? What would you do?" It was the first time he'd used my first name, and hearing it in his voice felt intimate, like he was touching something tender inside me. "I think I'd write," I admitted. "I used to write poetry in college. Terrible poetry, probably, but it felt like telling the truth for once." "I bet it wasn't terrible." "You didn't read it. Didn't have to. You can tell when someone's being honest. It's never terrible." Week 43 was when everything shifted. It was early August, oppressively hot, and the motel's air conditioning was struggling. I came in later than usual, almost 1 a.m., and Caspian looked up from his book with concern. "You okay?" I wasn't. I'd just come from dinner with my parents, where I'd planned to tell them the truth about myself, about who I really was, about the fact that I'd been lying to them my entire life, about something fundamental. But when my father started talking about how proud he was that I'd gotten my life on track, how relieved he was that I'd moved past my confused phase in college, the words died in my throat. "I'm a coward," I said to Caspian. "You're here, aren't you? Every week for 43 weeks you've been showing up to figure yourself out. That's not cowardice. I can't even tell my own parents who I am." Caspian came around the counter, and for the first time in all those weeks, he touched me. Just his hand on my shoulder, warm and steady. "You're telling yourself. That's where it starts." I looked up at him, and something in his eyes was different. Or maybe I was finally letting myself see what had been there all along. "Caspian," I started, then stopped, terrified. "Yeah?" Why do you always give me room 17? He was quiet for a long moment, then so softly I almost didn't hear it. Because I wanted you to come back. My heart was doing something complicated in my chest, something that felt like fear and hope and possibility, all tangled together. Why did you want me to come back? He smiled, sad and sweet. I think you know why. I did know. I'd known for weeks, maybe months, but I'd been too afraid to look at it directly. The way my Thursday nights had become the center of my week. The way I'd catch myself thinking about him during meetings, wondering what book he was reading, what he'd think about something I'd seen or heard. The way being near him felt like finally being able to breathe. I'm still figuring things out, I whispered. I know. I'm not asking you for anything, Hollis. I just wanted you to know that this, he gestured between us, whatever this is, it's not just you feeling it. I went to room 17 that night and didn't sleep at all. Just lay there with that plant on the windowsill and thought about all the ways I'd been lying to myself, all the ways I'd been small and scared and hidden. And I thought about Caspian's hand on my shoulder, his quiet admission, the way he'd been patient with me for 43 weeks without asking for anything in return. The next Thursday, week 44, I brought him coffee from the good place in the city, the way he liked it. 1 sugar, no cream. Thank you, he said, surprised. Thank you, I countered, for room 17, for not pushing, for just being here. It's literally my job to be here. You know what I mean. He did. I could see it in his face. Week 52, I told my sister. We were at brunch and she was talking about her boyfriend, and suddenly I couldn't keep it in anymore. The words just came out. I'm gay. I've been staying at a motel every Thursday for a year because I met someone and I didn't know how to deal with it. She put down her fork. The motel guy. How did you... Hollis, you've been different, lighter. I figured it was someone. Is he good to you? We're not together. We're just friends. I don't even know if he... Does he make you happy? I thought about Caspian's laugh, the plant he'd left in room 17, the way he looked at me like I was worth waiting for. Yeah, he does. Then what are you doing here? Go tell him. But I didn't. Not that week or the next, or the next. Because what if I was reading it wrong? What if his patience ran out? What if I ruined the one good thing I had? Week 62, Caspian wasn't there. A different clerk, a kid who couldn't have been more than 19, was behind the counter. Where's Caspian? I asked, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. Called in sick. You want your usual room, 17? He told you? Yeah, man. He's got it in the computer and everything. Room 17, every Thursday, hold for Hollis. I took the key and went to the room, and it felt wrong without knowing Caspian was down in that office. The plant on the windowsill looked droopy, and I realized he must water it, must take care of it during the week while I was gone. I texted the front desk number. Hope you're okay. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. Just a cold. Sorry I missed you. The plant misses you too. Just the plant? I stared at those 3 words for a long time. Then I typed, no, not just the plant. Week 63, tonight. I pulled into the parking lot with my heart in my throat, and Caspian was there, back at his post, looking a little tired but smiling when I walked in. Feeling better? I asked. Much. Your room's ready? I took the key, but I didn't move toward the door. Caspian, can I ask you something? Always. Why have you been so patient with me? He closed his book, took off his reading glasses. Because I know what it's like to take a long time to figure yourself out. I know what it's like to be scared. And I thought, if this person needs room 17 to feel safe enough to become who they really are, then I'm going to make sure room 17 is always here. What if, I said, my voice shaking, What if I'm ready to be that person now? What if I'm ready to stop hiding? Then I'd say it's about time. He was smiling, really smiling. I'm gay, I said out loud to him for the first time, and I've been falling for you since week 5 when you left that pillow. Week 3, he corrected softly. I started falling for you week 3 when you told me about the water stain on the ceiling looking like a map. I laughed, and it came out half sob. We've wasted so much time. No, Caspian said, coming around the counter. You took the time you needed. That's not waste. He was standing in front of me now, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, close enough that I could smell his soap, something clean and cedar. Can I kiss you? I whispered. I thought you'd never ask. And he did. Right there in the fluorescent lighting of the Starlight Motel office, he kissed me, and it felt like every Thursday night had been leading to this moment, soft and sure and like coming home to a place I'd never been but had always been searching for. When we broke apart, I was crying, and he wiped my tears with his thumb. So, he said, same time next Thursday? Actually, I said, I was thinking maybe we could do something different. Maybe you could come to my place, or we could go to dinner, or literally anything that isn't a motel room. But room 17 will always be special, but I don't want to hide anymore. I want to take you on a real date. I want to hold your hand in public. I want to stop living my life in compartments. Caspian grinned. I get off at 7 a.m. I'll bring breakfast. It's a date. I went to room 17 one last time that night, but I didn't stay. I watered the plant, straightened the bedspread, and said a quiet thank you to that space that had held me while I figured myself out. Then I went back to the office and sat with Caspian until dawn, making plans for a future I'd been too scared to imagine before. As the sun came up and his shift ended, he locked the office door and took my hand, and we walked to our cars in the pink morning light. See you in a few hours? He asked. I can't wait, I said, and I meant it. 63 weeks of Thursday nights had led me here to this parking lot, to this moment, to this person who'd seen me when I couldn't see myself. And as I drove home, I realized I wasn't running away anymore. I was running toward something, toward truth, toward love, toward the life I was supposed to have been living all along. Room 17 will always be there if I need it, but I don't think I will, because I finally found what I was looking for. Total_char_count 16,847.